All right. Everybody, this video is on a martial art I would love to make fun of, but I can't because I've sparred with people who do this system and they've given me a hard time. And the last thing I want to do is get my ass kicked by people who wear leotards. This video is on Savate.
Pow pow, inside fighting, yeah, dangerous martial arts. Pow pow, ooh ah.
Okay, so let's first look at the history of Savate. Savate started in the 1800s. It's a French martial art. They say it started in Marseille. Sailors on boats were fighting, and at the time it was illegal to fight with bare knuckles. You couldn't punch people, so they developed a system that was heavily kick-oriented. And the approach was meant to be fencing with your feet. And if you look at these old videos of Savate, it looks exactly like fencing with your feet, which is very unique, but also very funky to look at, and I don't know how effective it is. Now, there's a guy, Charles Lecoul, who very early on, he was one level down from the guy who started the system, ended up fighting this guy, Owen Swift, who was a British bare-knuckle boxer. And what he realized was that it was very, very hard to fight someone who had very good punching because they were just relying on their legs all the time. And if you're not training against people who punch all the time, you're at a huge disadvantage. It's the number one thing people do in a fight is use these bad boys right here. So you got to get used to it. And luckily, and this is something I love, is he noticed a disadvantage in the system he was training. And so what did he do? Instead of running away and hiding, which a lot of people do, or they just come up with some kind of weird rationalization for defending why their system is the best and not adding on these new techniques, he said, no, I'm going to implement Western boxing into our fencing kicking style. And so he started taking on those techniques. And in the process of doing that, he created or advanced and helped evolve into a very effective form of kickboxing. Even though when you look at it, man, you just want to laugh at it. It's not just the leotards, it's how the kicks themselves look. They look funky. I don't know why they look so funky. You look at these videos and you're like, man, that would not work. But it really does somehow work. I know from firsthand experience, and I've also researched it and look at some of these fights that these guys are having, and they are very effective fighters, even though it looks ridiculous. It kind of reminds me, on a very, very fundamental level, of old school Jean-Claude Van Damme movies, because he did wear those kind of leotard or like super tight tank top approach. He is French, and he does have these kicks that do look like Savate kicks. And I don't know if he's influenced by Savate, but there is something there that looks very Savate-ish in how he kicks and moves. So let's talk about the pros, in my opinion, of Savate. I am just gonna, for sure, cycle through old videos here of like how it really does look like fencing, how they kind of keep range, they pop in, they touch, and they pull back. And I want to talk about that in terms of why I believe it makes the martial art unique, and it's actually a pro for the martial art. So you look at hard impact styles of kickboxing, things like Muay Thai, things like Kyokushin. People look at this and they praise it, right? These guys are tough, they're able to beat each other up. There's beautiful movement there. They can throw their hips fully into a punch. But what Savate gave people, at least the people who train it in that system, is a give and take approach to fighting. And I really love give and take approaches. It comes from, in my opinion, it's a very similar approach to what you see in Filipino styles of fighting. Filipinos, because of the knife, believe that you don't need to like throw your whole body through the person. You just need to touch them. You need to slice them or stab them. So a lot of the systems became very flow-based because I'm just trying to touch you. I'm trying to feel where I get that impact, and then I'm just trying to continue it. Well, because of the fencing approach, which if you think about it is a bladed approach, it's almost the same idea, it created a very similar kind of thing where it's a touch, a give and take of fighting and a flow in the system. And you look at a lot of Savate guys, and one of the things I will say, which is a huge compliment, in my opinion, it's one of the biggest compliments I can give to a fighter, is that even at a very early level, Savate guys understand flow. One of my biggest pet peeves in martial arts, when I'm sparring, you look at Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, you look at Sambo, you look at any system, it's hard to find guys who can drop their ego and just flow with you. And that's where I get most of my advancement. Most of my growth happens when I'm not do or die. It happens when I'm open and my body's more relaxed and I'm experimenting. It seems to me, and it's very hard to find that. In jiu-jitsu, a lot of guys have ego, and all these different styles, a lot of guys have ego. When you start beating them, what they do is they tighten up, right? It happens in ground fighting systems and it happens in stand-up systems where someone just suddenly throws a full force punch and you're like, what the hell? When did we get here? And now it's escalating. Happens on the ground too. But Savate specifically, in my experience, the guys I've trained with have incredible control, incredible ability to just touch you and flow with you and then give and take. And it's such a beautiful skill set. The only other place I've experienced that degree of flow is Filipino martial arts or super high level guys in other systems. Super high level guys in Muay Thai are very good at flow. Super high level guys in Kyokushin and super high level guys in Filipino martial arts. But in Savate, I feel like it is ingrained from day one to have that approach. Again, maybe because of the fencing.
As an additional note, which I forgot to add, which I think is pretty cool, is that Savate started off originally in competition as a point-based system, which looked a little bit ridiculous. But here's the cool part. It seems to have, by many people's interpretation, led potentially to the point fighting style of karate, the sport fighting style of karate that we see. Because originally Okinawan styles tended not to kick high, and so they adopted elements of Savate to turn their style into a more enticing competition-based style. Jesse Enkamps has a great video on it. I've linked it below, so check it out. It also seems like Savate did have throws early on, which have been lost primarily over the years due to the way the competition's evolved. So there's a little bit of tidbit information for you.
The other thing is that taking on that Western boxing approach with those kicks, with those unique kicks, created a very, very unique system, a system that I find is very hard to find a comparison to anywhere else. And when you take that and you say, okay, well, they fought with their shoes on, and I think it's incredibly good to fight with shoes on. It's something else that a lot of combat sports don't give you. So this is another pro. Savate translates to old shoe. I speak French. I never heard that before. I don't even know if that's true, but that's what everyone says. Anyway, so Savate, old shoe, comes from the sailors on the boats. It's an incredible ability to be able to fight with a shoe on, because when you go out on the street and you fight somebody, you're going to have a shoe on, and there's not a lot of systems that take into account. We learn how to fight with our shins. We learn how to fight with our insteps. How often do we learn to fight with the tip of our shoe? I know Okinawan guys learn to fight with the tip of their toes and the tip of their fingers, but there's not a lot of kickboxing styles that do that. And even the ones that do train your actual fingers and your toes are not really taking into account that you're going to be wearing a shoe. So you don't need to spend 10 years conditioning your toe. You need to learn to kick with a shoe and feel what that feels like. The weight is different. The hip rotation is different because you have more weight on the end of your foot. So it changes things. And they're actually out there training it all the time, which gives them a huge advantage in any situation where they are on the street. Even my footwork, I purposefully, is that the word? Wear shoes sometimes when I'm training so I could feel the ground. I'll go outside and I'll shadow box with shoes on, or I'll ask a friend to spar on the concrete with shoes on so I can start feeling what that's like, and I can put my foot up and feel how the shoe makes my kick feel different. And so Savate guys, again, they have that from day one. And it's really interesting because those tip kind of crashing into your liver, and we saw that in Fight Quest when Jimmy got kicked in the liver and he just dropped to the ground. It's effective. Anderson Silva also showed a kick that was like a roundhouse kick, but just a knee-based roundhouse kick where he did that and he kicked with the toe, and it looked incredibly effective. The guy was in a lot of pain. And so it shows you don't need to throw your whole hip and commit fully to this punch or to this kick because you have an added weapon on your foot. And so that's another great pro of the system, which I think is very, very unique. Now, another thing I will say about the system is that they wear leotards. That's it. No, I want to talk about a couple of the cons that I see in the system. So one of the cons I see in the system is that they're not as versed in clinching, in elbows and knees. The system is very, very specific in the techniques it has, at least on the kickboxing aspect. There is an element of Savate, which is street Savate, which is a whole different system in my opinion, and it's hard to get into. But if we're looking at just the French kickboxing aspect of it, it is lacking those things. But again, I can't say that's necessarily a criticism, because by that standard, you could criticize any martial art. You could say that Kyokushin doesn't have the face punching, Muay Thai doesn't have grappling. And so I don't think that that necessarily puts it down, because I've seen Savate guys be incredibly effective against Muay Thai guys. I've seen them be incredibly effective against Kyokushin guys and just kickboxers in general. And so to put down the system based on that would be unfair. I think that it's a very good system, but that is something that if you are a Savate guy, or if you were looking to learn Savate, to add on to your arsenal, I would say you also have to learn how to clinch, how to elbow, and use those tools. They're just a fundamental tool set. And in my opinion, they're very, very important for street fighting. It's more important, in my opinion, to know how to clinch and elbow and knee in a street fight than it is to know how to punch. And people might disagree with me. They might hate that I said that, but I don't like punching in street fights. I find you extend your arm away from your face and you leave yourself to be open. Although I always, this is completely off track, hide behind my shoulder. I do not like punching loose like this, like a lot of guys do, right? They punch here. Nope. I hide. I want to be a tank when I punch. Okay, back to the video. So Savate, lots of positives, very unique system. I will say that if there was a Savate school near me, I would go train there. And that's a compliment to the system. It's one of the martial arts that I would really, really love to get more into just because I have felt it and I've been impressed by it. And again, it's one of those systems that when I look at how it looks on video, right, and I don't feel it, I'm like, man, this is incredibly stupid. Their body mechanics do not look effective. It does not look like they're torquing their hips. It doesn't look like they're throwing their body behind their kicks. It doesn't look like there'll be any power, but somehow there is. And again, I love that they implement Western boxing as a core into their system. It gives them an incredible advantage and one up over other systems. It's the same idea as Dutch kickboxing, which did that very early on too. And again, it's very hard to add a skill set on separately as opposed to a skill set that is perfectly ingrained and evolved in your system. So to take Western boxing, which I don't care what anyone says, Western boxing is the S-class of punching systems in the world. There is no system that comes close to it. It means you will be better than anyone at punching and avoiding punches. That's just what boxing gives you. And so if that from day one evolved in your system, you have a massive advantage with your hands over other people. So I think kudos to Savate for doing that. It's the same kind of thing that I say about Sanda, where I think kudos to Sanda for implementing transitional takedowns into their system for day one. I don't think there's any system in the world, vice versa, not vice versa. Why am I saying vice versa? Don't think there's any system in the world that will give you what Sanda gives you, because from day one, you're learning how to take people down off the combos of your punches. So a wrestler might be great at takedowns, but he might not be great as punching into an elbow into a takedown. A Sanda guy will be incredible at punching you, kicking you into a takedown, or catching your kick into a takedown, or all the things that are transitional. And so again, very, very fluid touch and go that you get from Savate for having boxing so early on and having this fencing approach with your feet so early on, that it gives you a very, very great foundation to add on other things. So if you like this video, please like and subscribe. Went on a bit of a rant there, but I like Savate. I'm a fan.